can start at any time.
Okay. And so thank you for having us, Mehana. Was that my signal to begin the share screen? Okay, let me go ahead and do that. Oya. So I think we'll wait a few more moments until 3 o'clock. But my name is Cody Poyopata. I'm the moderator today on behalf of a coalition of Kumu Hula who have come together in a group called Hua Makahikina. We'll explain a little bit more about that later. But again, thank you for joining us today, taking time out of your busy day. We know it's a kind of a US holiday, and so if you're taking a pause in your preparations for whatever you're going to do, mahalo for joining us. We hope that you had a chance also to watch our panel presentation yesterday by other ko Kumu Hula in our group, Hua Makahikina, and it was on the wonders of Uala. And if you don't know what Uala are, you can go back to OHA's Facebook and watch the archived video of that. And hopefully today we'll be having a few laughs about subjects that are a little bit more serious. So maybe not laughs about the subjects, but laughs during the subjects. And these subjects that we'll be introducing have to do with how can we improve and maintain the Mauli Ola, or the overall health and well-being of ourselves as well as those in our palama. And palama is a word that we are using instead of social distance bubble. A bubble sounds kind of frail, but culturally, palama is a lot more strong. I see we have about 1 more minute left. Thank you for everybody joining us. And the way that it is now, sharing my screen, I can't really see if there's messages going on. And so our host this evening, or this afternoon, is Mehana Hind, or Kumu Hula Mehana Hind. So Mehana, if there's anything that I need to do, just use your co-host capability and jump right in. Today's presentation is going to be called Nānā Kumu, and hopefully, just like we did earlier with the term Lāhui that we think is understood by everybody, we were able to expand upon the mana'o of Lāhui. And so hopefully today we'll also be able to expand upon what we know of the term Nānā Kumu. So for those of you joining us on our Facebook Live, as well as through the OHA platform, welcome. My name is Cody Poyopata. I'm a Kumu Hula, and I'll be the moderator for this wonderful panel today of my peers, my Kumu Hula peers. Let me go ahead and kick this off with a small pule. The theme for this set of series is called Ho'eu, Ho'ulu, and Ho'ola, which is incite, inspire, and invigorate. So let me offer a short pule Ho'olu. No ana ola dai da na hele hele ya ra ye de di o e da wa do do una ya di no malu da la ni malu o lu ma na ola dai do na ma ga umaro no umaro no wa ide no no lila ano ai me ke aloha. Welcome with warm affection to our presentation today called Nānā Kumu. You have to excuse me. I have allergies that's post-nasal drip, so it makes me kind of cough a little bit. On the screen right now, you'll see this term called Lāhui Kānaka. And this was our proactive response to the sharp increase of COVID-19 cases that are affecting Native Hawaiian and Pacific Islander communities here in Hawaii. And so a hui of us, Kumu Hula, got together from across the Pai'aina and even parts of the continent, the US continent. We agreed originally on a 30-day Lāhui, which is a type of kapu, to help us stop the spread of the coronavirus. And this kapu is called Lāhui Kānaka. It represents all of our intentions gathered together so that we can focus them in order to keep our health and well-being, our Mauli Ola, at its prime. The original kapu that we observed was from August 16th with the rising of the Mauli moon, and it continued for 3 anahulu, which are 3 10-day periods, until the Mauli moon of September 14th. And so it was during that time also that the Kumu Hula of our group, named Hua Makahikina, we were able to adapt the Lāhui Kānaka, which is meant for hula practitioners. We adapted it for implementation by the public, and which was then invited to join us over the next Malama. And once again, the ultimate goal is to improve and maintain the sanctity of the Mauli Ola, which is the physical, mental, and spiritual health and well-being for ourselves as well as for those within our palama. So the original series was called Ho'okahua, which is where we were able to kind of set the foundations for what the Lāhui was. And you can find those archived on the platforms of Kanai Okana as well as Oha. And in those, we introduced the terms, some of which you'll hear today, that are basic to this Lāhui Kānaka, and fundamental ways in which we can improve our Mauli Ola. Once again, this series is now called Ho'eu, Ho'ulu, and Ho'ola, Incite, Inspire, Invigorate. And yesterday, members of our Hua Makahikina group, they presented a panel on the wonders of Uwala. So check that out on Oha's platform if you'd like to, on their Facebook. Coming up in the next few weeks, we have a few more presentations. One is basically empowering health and wellness through Kaunaoa. I think that's on November 5th. Around November 8th, we have Kumu Hula Leimomi Akana. She'll be presenting on hula lineages, hula, and even a mele that she composed that kind of reflects the time period that we're going through right now. And in the ensuing weeks, we have a few more after that. So we are today representing our group, Hua Makahikina. So I'd like to introduce my co-panelists here today. Born and raised amongst the fierce and cold, piercing kipu'upu'u rain and wind of Hawaii, Kahealani Wilcox is the Kumu Hula of Kaiaunu in Waimea. She studied under the Beamer Solomon Hālau of Po'ohala, under Kumu Hula Hulali Covington, and later became a student of Unu Kupu Kupu under the direction of Kumu Hula, Dr. Taupori Tangaro. And she's been a joy to work with. In fact, I started to compose a little song for her. It goes like this. Kahealani, but I haven't finished it. Anyhow, the next panelist that I'd like to introduce, I'm just going to tell you, when we practice chanting in the Hālau, practice prayers that are a little bit strong, we do so in front of a banana stump just in case something goes wrong. And so last night I had to practice his name over and over in front of a banana stump just in case I started to have a stroke or something. So the next Kumu Hula I'd like to introduce, his name is Robert. Ke ano ke ala kahiki kapole kamaka opua kaupu the fourth. Whew. No stroke. Okay. And he was born and raised in Keaukaha on the island of Hawaii. He studied under Kumu Hula Ray Fonseca, as well as Uncle Johnny Lam Ho. His enduring love for hula led him to complete uniki ceremonies in August of 2008 under Kumu Hula Hokulani Holt. And his ko-pakana is Kauhilona Honua Padilla, who was born and raised in a family of Kumu Hula and dancers on the island of Maui. And under the advice of his mother, he also danced for Kumu Hula Holoa Standard. And in 2008, he completed his uniki ceremonies and is now Kumu Hula, along with Ke'ano Ka'upu, of the widely recognized, celebrated, and award-winning Hālau Heirarchy Makalehua. And next, we have the privilege of introducing Miss Aloha Hula 1927, Kumu Hula Kapua Ka'au'a, contestant number 4. She hails, of course, from Hilo, Hawaii, and she was raised part-time on Molokini, but mostly in the Ahupua'a of Kalawa Mauka, along the steep cliffs of Hilo, Palitu. She's been a cultural practitioner for over 25 years, which is longer than I've been alive. And she had formal training under Dr. Taupori Tangaro, who bestowed upon her the uniki rites of passage and allowed her to become a Kumu Hula. Her halau is Unu o Keahi, And just as a side note, if you're in the Hilo area and you panic because you think you're smelling vog, don't panic. It's probably just our kimchi factory. We have Kumu Hula, Kapua Ka'a'a. And my name is Cody Pueo Pata. My original Kumu Hula was Nona Mahilani Kaluhio Kalani, and our hula master is Uncle George Lanakila Kekia Hiali'i Na Ope. I graduated from them. And during my training, they sent me also to study under Auntie Keala Kukona, JJ Akiona, and his hula master, Auntie Hilda Keana Aina. And so today we are representing our group called Hua Makahikina. It's our pleasure to have you. Thank you for hosting us, or for hosting us in your home today. And as we begin this talk, it is on Nānā Ike Kumu. So I'd like to turn it over to my co-panelists, Na Kumu Hula, Ke Ano Kaupu, and Lono Padilla. Mahalo.
Aloha mai kako.
Aloha.
Mahalo nui, everybody, for coming and joining us in discussion of what is Nānā Ike Kumu and what does it mean to us, the panel of judges, the panel of Kumu Hula. When we look at Nānā Ike Kumu, it's most commonly defined as look to the source. We often use this olelo no ea when referring to a person seeking knowledge, guidance, understanding, inspiration, skill, confirmation, or purpose. More often than not, this translation is more beneficial for the seeker than to the source. If we look at other ways to define this proverb, we can understand that Nānā also means to observe, to care for, pay attention to, and to take care of the kumu, the source, the foundation, the origin, ancestor, and in our case, the kumu, the teacher. With this understanding, both parties mutually benefit through a reciprocal relationship that is created by their respective roles, responsibilities, privileges, and functions. The inspiration for this panel discussion really came about while in discussion in one of our weekly meetings with Hua Makahikina. One of our elder Kumu Hula, very well respected in the Hawaiian community, explained that she didn't really feel that she was adequately being cared for by her students during this pandemic. Not one of her haumana offered to check up on her or her well-being. Now, as you can imagine, there was kind of a collective gasp, even with the mute on. You could kind of feel that energy from the rest of the Kumu Hula, and it kind of prompted us to discuss why this is, why exactly this has happened, not just to that particular Kumu, but why this happens at all. And yes, we discussed, generations, and then thought about it and said, well, in Hālau, there's multiple generations, and then the Kumu start to do what the Kumu do. They turn it on themselves, and we started to be like, well, what are we doing maybe that is allowing this to happen? Yeah, and or what are we not doing maybe? And so we kind of had a good discussion going on and decided, okay, well, let's talk about it. Let's really bring it to the forefront and make a panel discussion about it. And so here we are. This discussion about this unfortunate observation reminded us of the structure of our kuahu and the structure of our halau. It reminded us of what is needed for our hula universe to operate optimally. But we also recognize that this predicament is not exclusive to hula. It applies to every aspect of our lives. It applies to everyone, actually. And the functions that are used to remedy these situations in hula can also be applied to everyone in their everyday lives. So exactly how do we cultivate a relationship that allows us to appropriately Nānā Ike Kumu? Really, where do you start, right? So Lono will help us kind of guide us initially on where that is.
So we start with an olelo no eo. Ua lehulehua mano mano ka ikena ka Hawaii. Great and numerous is the knowledge of the Hawaiian people. Yeah, so we look to our past to help us in the present and looking to the future. Yeah, we start with the knowledge and experiences that we all have, and we ask questions, and then we seek answers as well. We might make mistakes along the way, and there might be some consequences that come with that, but we try to make the corrections, and we holomua, and we go forth. Yeah, so here are a couple of questions here that might be good for us to think about as the other panelists are speaking, and how we can apply this to our own life, to our own community, to our own palama at home. Yeah. Why is it important to Nānā Ike Kumu in all aspects of our lives? And what are some core Hawaiian values that are found in our Hālau hierarchy that also support a healthy lifestyle? How can healthy relationships be cultivated and strengthened by understanding and practicing of this Hawaiian hierarchical structure? We'll learn about kūlana and kuleana and what their relationship is to each other and how that's important to Lāhui Kānaka. We'll also talk about how the knowledge and hierarchy can be applied to benefit your palama and how respecting the kūlana and carrying out kuleana also supports overall optimal health and overall Mauli Ola.
Next slide, please. Mahalo. Okay. Now, you remember when I asked that question, where do we start? We have this phrase in hula, and I think in many different cultural practices, and that question really is, what's your function? Yeah, what's your function in any situation? We have to have a function. We have to participate. We have to have a purpose. We cannot just be a fly on the wall or a wallflower. In order for all things to have movement, progress, and thrive, you must contribute. Yeah, and you must contribute more than you consume. How do we find out what our function is? Well, we take a look on the slide, understanding kūlana and kuleana. Aya. Mahalo. We look here, the first word, kūlana. You can see that the definition, station, rank, title, position, place, and we're going to pay really close attention to the next word, hierarchy, and role. Then we look at kuleana, responsibility, right, privilege, concern, title, business, jurisdiction, authority, function, and again, paying really close attention to that word function. Yeah. Then we take a look at how kūlana comes with kuleana. You cannot have one without the other. Both are interdependent on each other, and kūlana depends on kuleana in order for it or kūlana to exist. Kuleana would not have purpose. Kuleana would not have purpose and cannot be carried out without respecting the kūlana. I don't think that a lot of people realize that everyone has a kūlana. Even in modern day society, everyone has a kūlana. We are all born into some sort of hierarchy in our Hawaiian community. Age, generation, birthright, skill, it all determines what your kūlana is. In modern society, kūlana in our respective circles also exist because everyone has a role to play. Whether it's family, school, career, or other cultural practices. Kūlana and kuleana allows the community to stay organized, classified, efficient, and effective. It helps to create and maintain balance. And in our Hawaiian worldview, everything was structured for balance. As your kūlana changes, so does your kuleana. The responsibilities and privileges go hand in hand. This is dependent on your kūlana. For example, if you're being promoted at a job, the responsibilities may increase, but so does the privileges and the benefits. Um, Giving birth to a child changes the kūlana of the wahine now as a parent with the added responsibility of caring for a child. Kūlana and kuleana tends to serve the ego more. Sorry, kūlana without kuleana tends to serve the ego more than any purpose. And we got to really think about going all the way back to Akua. Yeah, Akua had purpose. Akua had function. Yeah, it was a reciprocal relationship with the Kānaka. So really thinking about that as well. And once you kind of understand that kūlana comes with kuleana, then you gotta know your role. Yeah, know your place. You first need to establish, understand, and accept your kūlana in any given hierarchical system. It is your kūlana that determines what your functions are. Depending on our kūlana, sometimes we need to either step up or maybe even humble ourselves and step back. And again, know your role. After you establish your role, understand it, and accept it, you then carry out your kuleana, kalamai. You carry out your kuleana. It is imperative that you malama and awamo that kuleana. So we're going to look at that word awamo. Traditionally, it was a pole or a stick used for carrying burdens across the shoulders. So carrying ukana, vai, to easily transport these particular kūlana. Kuleana. And so we kind of relate that when talking about kuleana, that we must carry these burdens. But at the same time, yeah, once we have these burdens to carry, we need to also malama them. We need to take care of, tend to, attend, care for, preserve, protect, and I'm going to skip a little bit more over, and maintain our kuleana. Yeah, that is super, super important. Once we live our function, yeah, then everything can run a little bit more smoothly. And I'm going to pass it back over to Lono.
So when we're talking about function and hierarchy, we as Kumu Hula, we are very familiar with the hierarchy of hula. And so we look to the structure and origin of the hierarchy in Hawaii in order to better understand how we can move forward in our lives. Next slide, please. So we'll be going over the structure and origins of hierarchy here in Hawaii, analyzing the structure and origin of how hierarchy from ancient Hawaiian society then carries forward to today, and establishing how this hierarchy in our practice of hula that we are all familiar with reflects this origin and these structures. Then we'll go into the initiation into a Hālau hula when we're talking specifically about hula, exploring the different ways that one is inducted into a halau. How do people join halau? How do people get involved with hula? And the importance of practicing proper etiquette from even before being initiated into a halau. Then we'll talk about observing kūlana and kuleana in this specific cultural practice of hula and the halau hula, dissecting the basic hierarchy structure from what we are familiar with by kūlana and the accompanying kuleana that comes with it. And also relating the structure of a kuahu that is used within the halau hula to the ascension of people's kūlana in the halau. And so then we will have the increased awareness of kūlana and kuleana and how that relates to our palama in our own families, and then therefore in our own communities, and then therefore in the Lāhui. Okay, now all this information that we share, it comes from our own experience. Yeah, all of these collective Kumu Hula that are here today. And our collective cultural knowledge that was passed down from our kumu before us and that we share freely with you folks. So first we'll take a look at the structure and origins of hierarchy with Kumu Hula Kapua Ka'aua.
Mahalo nui loa no ke ano and Puel. And mahalo Puel for promoting my kimchi. I so mahalo that. Thank you so much. That was amazing for my kimchi promotion for our halal. If you like ono kimchi, you come to Hilo, we give you ono kimchi. Okay, we're going to take a look at what is the fundamental framework of a halal, and how does that look like? But before that, we're going to first look at the structure, the ali'i structure system that our culture had put into place for many hundreds of years. And from there, we're going to segue into what does that look like in our halal system. And so if you look at the slide, ke ano o ka ho'okupu ali'i ana, this has been taken out from Kepilino. And what this shows us is the kūlana and the kuleana of the people of that time. And first you look at when you look at it, you can see that it has to do with land tenureship. And it has to do with the kuleana that they had on that land tenureship. And so I'm gonna just kind of briefly go through this because we have a very extensive presentation for you today. But we're gonna start with the Ikihapa. And the Ikihapa basically tells us that there's a specific land section that this people are actually tending to, and they're either growing crops or they're doing things that has to do with feeding the next kūlana or the next pie that is going to benefit from what they're doing. Okay, and so from the Kihapa, you end up with the Aiali'i, and the Aiali'i, the function of the Aiali'i was to gather everything that was in the different Kihapa areas and collect goods and collect things for the community to use and for the greater ali'i. And so as you go down, you can see the different stratas and the different kūlana, and it builds up, it ascends, and then you finally reach the area where you see ali'i nui. And the function of the ali'i nui was to oversee, as we know as people, was to oversee the community and to make sure that their community was fed well. And that kuleana, as Keanu has told us, comes with kūlana. But without the kuleana, it's just a kūlana. Yeah. And if you just have a kūlana without kuleana, then you're just basically a kumu without students, because as our ali'i tells us from time past, that if you're not a good ali'i in your community and you're not serving your community well, then you're not an ali'i. Yeah. And so this is the reciprocation that happens, yeah, between the community and the kumu. Yeah. And this is a very intricate package deal, right? Between our community, between the ali'i and the greater maka'ainana and the kawa and all of those stratas. Okay. Next slide, please. And now we're going to we took this out of Puel. It's beautiful Puel. He took this out of Kepilino. We mahalo him. Yeah, Puel mahalo. Yeah, and I'm going to read to you this excerpt because it kind of tells us, kind of gives us the tone of how things happened back then and how things pretty much still happens in the halal system today. Apela ke ano Hawaii nei mai mau ano he ha'aha'a. Noho ke kahi malalui ho ke kahi, a ho'okupu ke kahi. Makawā kahiko he mea veli loa ka ho'oki'e, a ka I ka hikina mai nei o Nānā au Amelika. Hala ke au ha'aha'a, ku ke au ho'oki'e I kia wā. A ka mina no na'e, Mako, iko, mako, ano mua maia vahi. Today we see underneath the American system, we have a staunch individualism going on. And so in this little excerpt, you can see that there has been the idea that there's a specific kūlana and kuleana going on with people. And you can see that they move with humility in character and behavior, and one lived under the station of the other, as we saw in the previous slide. Yeah. And that individual process was intricate. That kūlana was intricate, and it was important for the whole society. And once you ended up breaking out of that whole idea of collectivism and deciding that you're going to do whatever you want to do, then you have a break in society. Yeah. And the same thing goes for the hula process, which is what we're going to look at right now. So next slide, prompt. Thank you so much. Amazing, Vanna White. And here we look at, we're going to look at the structure and the origins of the halau and what it looks like. What is the framework? The structure and the origins of this specific structure had to do with how the ali'i stratified framework worked. And the same, and it is still in place till today under the kuahu system. And so what it does is it gives everybody a kūlana, and it affords everybody kuleana. I'm going to say affords because it's a very important thing to have kuleana in a specific space. Now, if you don't have a function, like Ke'ano said, then you don't belong in that space. As we all know as hula people, yeah? What's your function? And if your function comes with just being a wallflower, which I absolutely love that term, wallflower looking, noho nani mai maka'au, yeah? Noho nani mai maka'au, just nana meka maka, alaila vala'au, hau vala'au, gasa gasa, yeah? Then you have no function in the halau, yeah? And so what this does, it creates a very strict, rigorous, yeah, community. And so we're going to look at that right now. Okay. Next slide, please. Mahalo. Mai ka'iloa. Mahalo. Now, this stratified system, we're gonna look at the beginning learners, and the beginning learners has to do with all of the people who come in the Noi, and they're kind of like deciding that they may want to dance hula. They may want to come into the halau and say, oh, maybe I'm going to try this. Maybe I'm going to dance hula, you know? So these are the pai, right? And so some of us in the halau, we use the word pai. And some of our halau use the word haumana, yeah, the at the basic core level. And then we have halau that use the word mu'o, okay? And so these are the beginning learners, the maka'inana, yeah? The people that are doing all the, they're just investigating the process. And so pai, if you look at the pictures, pai, I have an actual picture of pai. It's all those ili. See those ili? Those are the beginning levels of pai. It has to do with setting the framework of a foundation on a road, on a traditional roadway, but it has to do with coming in at that foundational space, right? And then you have haumana, and haumana has to do, the word, if you break it up, has to do with the chewing of the ava, yeah, the mana, yeah, and Puel will get into that a little bit later, and so he will explain to you exactly what that means, and we're going to allow him to do that. Okay, and then you have the mu'o. Now the mu'o I'm very familiar with because the mu'o has to do with my halau rearing, and I put for the mu'o, it's actually an unfurling of like a flower or a bud. It's not yet, it's kind of like an unfurled, but it's just not unfurled. That's a mu'o. Mu'o is also, if you look at the second picture, you can see the hala tree. Okay, you can see the hala. And if you look at the tip of the ule hala, yeah, the ule hala, the ule boto, you will see that there's this soft covering. It kind of looks like, we know what, okay? But that soft covering is called the mu'o. And we call our haumana mu'o because, and that would be the beginning learners, because they've not yet punctured. They've not yet punctured, to my learning that I've known through all my years, they've not yet punctured into the depth of the hula. They're just beginning. So like the hala that have not yet punctured into haumea, yeah, the beginning learners are yet still waiting to reach. They're waiting to reach that. And then when they reach that, you know, then that mu'o actually ascends to a different pi. Yeah. And so we're looking at the blue-collared kuleana, the blue-collared worker, or as one of our fabulous panelists would say, the essential worker. Okay, so you're looking at the essential worker. Okay, they're the ones that are going to do all the work in the halau that the next pi that's above them have to do, like, for many years. Okay, but they're important. They have a kūlana, and they're important. Yeah, because the ones that do the hardest work in the back in the kitchen. Yeah, I'm gonna say in the kitchen. Yeah, or in the back of the halau, you know, is the ones that pretty much hold up the halau sometimes. So we can't you know, defute them because they have a kūlana, very important, you know. But they follow the collective. They don't have higher responsibility as far as ritual is concerned, but they're equally as important for the halau system. Mahalo. Next slide. Thank you so much. This is amazing. The next slide we're looking at, now we're going to ascend. After you have done everything that you need to do as a beginning learner, you ho'ihi, your kumu, you do whatever it takes, you make your first lays, you do your first a'ahu for your first performance, you're all scared and paranoid, you know, you don't know what's going on half the time because you're probably dizzy. Okay, then you level up. Then you ascend because you've mastered that process, right? You've learned everything you needed to learn in that pi, and you earned your rights. You earned your rite of passage. And so then you level up to the next level, which is to possibly an olapa status. Yeah, in some halaus we move to the olapa. Okay, and then you start to create different mastery of other things that you would have not necessarily had access to as a beginning learner. Yeah, and so the ascension comes with protocol. It comes with deeper kapu. It also comes with stewarding things that you probably would have not gotten as a beginning learner. And so it's kind of like, you know, you're getting more work, right? But it's a good thing. It's a good thing because you're actually learning how the nuts and the bolts work in the halau system. Yeah. And so you're being able to use your screwdriver, and now you can tighten those nuts and bolts, and you can actually have access to that, right? I like that. Too good, huh? You can have access to that, and then you can, you know, you can start to steward not everything, but the things that the kumu will give you to so that you can understand at that pi. And once you're done with that process, sometimes you level up to ho'opa'a. Yeah? And ho'opa'a is a whole different level from being just an olapa. It comes with higher kūlana, comes with higher kuleana, and comes with higher stress, as we all know as hula people, right? Comes with stress. Hold up. And then, now, my plug went fall out, gang. Okay, let's move on. And then now, once you become ho'opa'a, then we've shown more mastery within the halau system. Then we get more kuleana. And this also has to do with po'opua'a. That's a different type of kūlana in a specific halau. Some people look at ho'opa'a, some people look at po'opua'a. It depends on what halau you're in. That'll determine what you can, you know, what you can ascend to and what's available to you within that halau system. But like the beginning learners, they have not yet shown full mastery yet of everything that they need to have the culmination of your learning. Now, it takes years of ho'ihi and years of commitment, yeah? And at this level, accountability is huge, yeah? Accountability is huge. And so sometimes it's not easy. It's not easy. It's not easy. But as an individual at this level, we also look at the collective process, which is very important in the Hālau system. Staunch individualism is non-existent in this process, yeah? And if it is, then there's a door. Yeah, we all agree as Kumu Hula, yeah? If staunch individualism is existing in the Hālau, there's a door, yeah? And so once you finish all of this and you bring your best pig to the kuahu, it's my kumu. I bring my kumu in right now. He would always tell us every practice, bring your best pig to the kuahu. Yeah? So once you bring your best pig to the kuahu, and it's not necessarily driving bringing the pig in the Hālau, you know, but it's bringing your best self, yeah? Showing that you can awamo all of this kuleana, showing that you can be accountable for yourself and a huge group below you, yeah? Because the kumu above you is watching this, yeah? And after years and years of kilo skills from the kumu, and I think Auntie Hokulani them and Auntie Pua and my kumu know that after that you kind of start to pick out the ones that you know will be able to awamo a community. The ones that have that leadership skills, the ones that will be able to take a community and move them collectively in a healthy light, yeah? Because the pahuhopu of this is collective health, yeah? So we always have to remember that in the Hālau system, there's a collective health thing going on, and I don't think people realize that sometimes you just come hula and they're like they're coming hula, but the outcome, like how we're saying for Lāhui Kānaka, is collective health. In the Hālau system, this is very alive. This is very alive. In a very healthy Hālau, collective health is alive and well. And so when you look at this stratified system, I like my kaina, my huina kolo, my pyramid I will make. I really appreciate this slide. I'm gonna keep it, gonna use them for my homana. Okay. Once you totally master all of that, and you've shown growth, and you're ready to pie up, then you reach maturation. Okay, and this is after years. Okay, then you reach maturation, and this will be after you do the konohiki process, right? Because I like to use konohiki for that part right before this one, because you know konohiki have big responsibility. Well, the ali'i has a huge responsibility, yeah? Same like the kumu, yeah? The kumu has a huge responsibility, yeah? Because now, as you ascend to Kumu Hula, not all of us do though, not all of us do, but for the ones that are fortunate to ascend to Kumu Hula, yeah, it's because we've shown mastery and what we know. And we've done the ho'ihi, we've done the years of ho'ihi, yeah? And so we've been accountable. And so now you become the curator of the customary protocols and decisions for your Lāhui. You now lead your community, right? Which is it's a huge thing. It's a huge thing. You can implement everything that you need that will service your community for collective health, yeah? Within your respectable spaces. That's so important, yeah? And I'm gonna use the word kahuna, okay? Because I like the word kahuna, yeah? I really do. Because you become the kahuna of your own community. You become that expert, yeah? Not necessarily the expert of other people's communities, because we all learn differently. We all move in different lights, but we have the same vision, but you become the kahuna of your community, basically, which is an expert, yeah, of what you know, okay? And so, but like I said earlier, and my kumu said this, and I'm gonna bring him in again, because you know he's taught me a lot along with my ohana, that a kumu is not a kumu without students. And a kumu cannot alakai a community if they're alakai in a community in detrimental waters. Yeah. And so you are not a kumu until you get students. And so if you have amazing leadership skill sets and you lead your community in a healthy light, yeah, you will then have a community to steward. Yeah, and that's important for us to remember as Kumu Hula, yeah. And with that said, I'm going to komo you into Kahialani, and she's going to give you this amazing presentation, yeah, of how do you get into the halau. How do you first step into the door? Yeah? Okay. Mahalo. Kuni hamana ihalai o ai ale lai wailu. Oh, kia ela ikalani. Kapu ni alai ele no nalo kai puha. Kalau la mau mai bai na leo. He ole ka he mai. Oh yeah.
Ai ke Kānaka kumu maloko hanai ai he vai koa ia no kaukula o kale o hele o vale no ai o komo. Mahalo nui kumu kapua. The chant that kumu kapua did is an oli kahea entitled Kunihi Kamauna, a chant requesting access into a space. And for this instance, it is a halau. The response that I did is an olikomo, a chant granting permission to enter into the halau. In this next portion, let us explore 3 experiences pertaining to hula initiation. The first is kaha'aviaku, passed down within the ohana. The first of the 3 examples of initiation is when the hula traditions are passed down within the family. The keepers of knowledge who safeguarded the pule, oli, and hula were usually maintained by the elder or expert within the family who kept the flame of knowledge burning. It was their responsibility to identify the next generation who would inherit the ipu, or calabash of wisdom. The perpetuation of knowledge is not void of the individual disseminating that ike. It is very important to remember that while we have a responsibility to carry on the traditions and knowledge handed to us, we simultaneously must care for the individual who identified, cultivated, and instilled the wisdom of generations past. We recognize this idea of expanding one's experiences and knowledge with the famous proverb of Marika Venapukui, "A'ohe pau ka ike I ka hālau ho'okahi." Not all knowledge is taught in one school. After setting the foundation within the ohana, certain individuals would be taken or identified by other kumu within the community to ho'onui ike, or broaden their knowledge as a hula practitioner. These chosen individuals possess the interests, aptitude, and requirements necessary to uphold the kuleana of the halau. The second, ke kono ana, invite from the kumu. It is very much an honor and a privilege to be invited into one's halau hula. Keen observation was made of one's abilities at a young age, or even as an adult, where they could formally be shaped, molded, and reared in the halau traditions. It was desired to possess students that could model the emotions, dexterity, and expressions of the Kumu Hula, along with possessing a genuinely kind nature that exemplified our surrounding elements. And lastly, and most commonly known today, konoi ana, requests of the student. With the coming of new ideas and approaches, we have adopted practices where the selection of haumana by Kumu is now primarily in the hands of the student and or parents. Hula, as we all know here today, is a replication of our natural environment. Like the seeds of the palapalai that are dispersed into the wind, Kumu Hula have embraced this act of dissemination of the opening of their halau in seeking their students. However, the Kumu holds the ultimate decision of who meets those values, beliefs, and practices that are in alignment of their cultural and spiritual traditions. Ano, Laila, as one steps into the sacred space of the Hālau Hula, they also enter into kūlana or structure and kuleana responsibility of that respected halau. Kumu Puel will now walk us through the process of kūlana and kuleana within the Hālau Hula.
Wow, thank you, everybody. So, just as my co-kumu have said already, our status structures are based basically off of the akua. And in our mo'olelo, the akua have different kūlana and kuleana. And then that's reflected in their physical body forms within the universe around us. Those akua, when they produced humans, that same hierarchical system entered in the human lines. And so just so you know, yesterday, the Wonders of Uala was presented on what we've identified as the pole named Akua. And so that represents Lono, right? And kind of being fed by the Akua. And today is Hoku. And so the more Lani-like lineages entered into us via Hoku Kalani. And so we've chosen that today to memorialize that we receive our structures via the Akua into our Ali'i lines. And so what you're seeing on the screen now is basically a very generalized structure of halau. This is not for everybody, okay? But we will say, we agree in our group that whether or not you have a hula studio or you have a pa hula or a halau, you have a structure. And as keepers of culture, we also know that this structure is based upon your abilities in front of the kuahu. Now that's not translated, not all halau practice kuahu, but if you have a halau that's based on a traditional structure, it actually stems from kahana maki kuahu. And so with that, we would like to say, show that this kind of delineates, this is a traditional pule that delineates, there is structure. And it says, here's Eakawaila, here is the water, this is the ava. It's life-giving water. Life through me, the kumu, life through the po'opua'a, life through the pai, life through all of the haumana, all of the students. And something in there, if you look at the line above it, it says, ulua eke kua noho I kona kahu. And the chant that I opened up with says, ho'olu mayana olaka I kona mau kahu. And Kumu Kapua mentioned the word kahu and kahuna, which basically says our traditional structures are based on Kumu Hula that originally served as kahu, which are the stewards or the guardians of their spiritual practices and the physical functions of their halau. We're going to begin with what does it mean? Kumu Kapua chanted to Kumu Kahea. And what that represents in the halau, when you do an oli kahea at the door, you are saying to the people inside, I am ready to enter your area. I've readied myself to become physically, mentally, and spiritually available to the authority of this halau. So, just as Kumu Keano and Kumu Lono said, kūlana comes with kuleana. If you come to my halau and you wish to be a haumana, well, let's look at the word. Today we just think it means student, but hau actually means to lay before or offer, and mana is a chewed mass of kava of ava. So if I want to enter your halau, in order for me, the haumana, to enable this to contribute to this halau, I can at the very least offer a mana, a chewed mass of ava, which allows or enables the Kumu Hula to perform the rites at the kuahu, basically in feeding the akua that they entreat. So haumana, not just student. As soon as I label you a haumana, it comes with a responsibility from a Hawaiian standpoint. And that's different than how we use it loosely to kind of correspond or correlate to how the English student is. Kumu Kapua mentioned the pai pai or the mu'o, and I'm just going to go briefly or very quickly over these different kūlana or statuses. The kuleana is a right and a privilege. So this slide is going to talk about the privileges and the rights of the people who enter at the pai pai or the mu'o level, and you can kind of see what the direct translations of those are. But it's at this pai pai or mu'o stage where everything gets introduced to these new haumana. Everything gets to become, it's all new. They come in and they're like, oh my gosh, am I going to make it? And then they begin to learn. And this is where the haumana begin to accrue the basic knowledge and skills that their ike hula will grow from. And the basic loina or the basic practices that they learn are the expectations of the halau, proper attire, your grooming, your protocol, the pule, the different steps, etc. And the immediate goal of the olapa is to, or of the mu'o is to continue on to become olapa. So Kumu Kapua mentioned blue-collar workers or essential workers. And in the U.S. society or the Western society, when you become a blue-collar worker, a lot of times it's like a limiting, it feels limiting because it seems like you're going to stay at that status forever. But in this system, in the halau, there is means to ascend. And so the pai pai or the mu'o want to ascend to become olapa. And just so you know, when there's an aha'aina, which is a ceremonial feast, and a pig is present, the different parts of the pig are given to different stages of the haumana. So whatever kūlana they are at, they then have the right to consume a certain part of the pig. And so the pai pai during the aha'aina ailolo perhaps can partake in the tail of the pig, right? Because the tail is what follows. And if you chop the tail off of a pig, it's not really detrimental to the pig's life. It's kind of like haumana, like Kumu Kapua said, they didn't really root themselves yet. They have the opportunity to. Excuse me. The next pai or kūlana is olapa, and as you can see, olapa means to flash like lightning. And she had Kumu Kapua had a picture of olapa leaves. And they at the slightest breeze, they begin to move, the way that at the slightest hint of music, the olapa should begin to dance. And so the content at this stage of mele become manifest in the bodies of the olapa. And even amongst the olapa, today we kind of symbolize hierarchy amongst them by lines, right? You have frontline dancers, middle line dancers, backline dancers. And so if you're a backline olapa, you want to ascend to the frontline olapa. And the immediate goal of the olapa is to ascend to the level of alakai if they make it that far. Again, hula isn't for everybody, and Kumu Kapua said there's the door. And so if you make it past the olapa stage, you can ascend perhaps to the olapa stage or alakai stage. As an olapa, it's your right then during the aha'aina ailolo to partake in the tail, the feet, the hock, and the ham of the pig. And of course, that's the feet. That's the way that the pig moves around, right? And so that kind of symbolizes what the function of the olapa is. And if they make it past this stage, they can perhaps ascend to alakai. This is a generalized format. Other halau have different structures perhaps, but this is a generalized format. This is also not a tutorial. We're not telling you this is how it is. We're just saying this is how it could be, and it's a broad brush application on a very complex painting, and that is a Hālau Hula. So this is now alakai, and alakai, it's a leader. It literally means leader, to direct, or to guide. They exemplify mastery in dance. And so often, and there's stratification also amongst the alakai, right? And sometimes the lead alakai, the best alakai are called lehua. Those are the most fit in the generalized loina and dance repertoire of the halau. And even alakai also don't have to be dancers. In some halau, they might not also just be good in dancing or chanting, but they have specific functions that is expected of them to lead. So this person might not be the best dancer, but she does know how to dye the pa'u well. So she can alaka'i that. So she becomes the alaka'i ho'olu pa'u, or whatever it's going to be. The right that alaka'i have two parts of the pig include, of course, the tail, the feet, the hock, the ham, and now the snout of the pig, because the snout is what digs deeper into the ground of a pig, right? It's what digs and roots and finds nourishment. But it also is what leads the pig, right? That's the front end. And the goal of the alaka'i is to perhaps ascend to ho'opa'a. Ho'opa'a aren't just chanters. They're the keepers of knowledge. Ho'opa'ana'au means to memorize. Okay? And so this is the level in Hālau where the repertoire of mele and pule, of the chant techniques, the rhythms, and the instrumentation are all internalized, mastered, and then can be presented in a masterful way. So the main focus at this kūlana is the intellectual and mental or a heightened understanding of Ike in all forms. That's what the ho'opa'a does. They ho'opa'ana'au, and they use that. As dancers, as former dancers, they know exactly what it feels like to dance. And so they use that experience to express it through the mele, through what they're chanting. As a ho'opa'a, they have the right to consume the tail, the feet, the hock, the ham, the snout, and also the ears of the pig, the jowls, and the tongue, as well as parts of the na'au, or the intestine, right? So as a chanter, we're expected to listen, a'apo, and catch a chant. We're asked to present this vocally, so that's represented by the tongue, of course, and also the chant techniques of the jowl, of the jaw. And the na'au represents being able to ho'opa'a na'au, or to memorize. And if you make it past this, you might be able to ascend to what's considered or called po'opua'a in a traditional system. There are other names for this, but po'opua'a is one that we've decided upon that's understood. Po'opua'a are the direct understudies of the kumu. Okay, it literally means pig head. So you can kind of guess what part of the pig they have right to, right? Pig head. After having mastered the skills of every preceding level, mastered. Okay, so that's different than in a Western society, right? I can pass the class with a minimum grade, and you can pass the class with the maximum grade. But when we finish the class, we both get the same degree. But in hula and our traditional societies, you do not ascend until you've proven mastery of that level of what's expected of you. Now, once they've mastered this, they learn the entirety of the Hālau loina, which is the practices, and even how to manage this, the Hālau. The right that the po'opua'a has includes everything mentioned before, but now also includes the eyes and the brain of the pig. That represents knowledge. It represents being able to see everything, know everything around the Hālau, and also the brain. You know, when we have feelings, we say that hits the na'au, right? And when we have premonitions, or we have these inspirations, that's na'au, but we process that through the lolo. We process all of that takes place in the na'au with our lolo, with our brain. And so being able to do that allows the po'opua'a the right to eat the brain. And once they do that in that ceremony, that usually means wakumu. They become a kumu hula. Now, kumu hula, again, you know, we say kumu hula. In Hawaiian, if you teach hula and you come from a recognized lineage or a formal hula institution, he kumu hula no oi, you are a kumu hula. But some people who are kumu hula prefer hula instructor or studio instructor or something like that. But the traditional term that we use, maka'olelo, is kumu hula. They are the leaders of Hālau or Pa hula. It means source. Kumu literally means source of hula, kumu hula. We are responsible for preserving, maintaining, and advancing the knowledge and loina of our lineages and cultivating every aspect of the Hālau. If something happens in the Hālau, it's our fault. Now, in the previous levels, the pai of the mu'o, they want to learn. And so they're the babies. So the olapa take care of them while also taking care of their responsibilities to the alaka'i. The alaka'i take care of the olapa and the pai and the mu'o, while also taking care of what they're supposed to be fulfilling for the ho'opa'a. The ho'opa'a take care of all of those people before them, and they tend to the kuleana given to them by the po'opua'a. The po'opua'a cares for everybody below them and for the direct will of the Kumu Hula. So it's this type of action when it comes to how we care for and maintain the sanctity of the Mauli Ola of everything and everybody within the halau. So the immediate goal of a Kumu Hula, though, is usually to be a successful conveyor of the loina of our lineages. And this is accomplished through various uniki rites for each level of haumana. Now, you might not call it uniki. Some people say graduation, some people say moving up ceremony, but it's stemmed upon the traditional uniki rites. And the kumu can eat everything that I mentioned of the pig, has the right to everything. But even now the kumu hula can then consume parts of the loin of the pig. The loin is the back, the meat that runs along the spine, the iwi kuamo'o of the pig. That kind of represents lineage. Okay, but for everyone in the halau, they're all human, including the kumu. And so a little bit of consideration and contribution goes a long way. The main goal in halau, one of the main rules, is to contribute more than you consume. Contribute more than you consume. What kind of haumana would you like? Consumers or also contributors? And so when we begin now to extend this into how do our hula practices, which come from Akua to Ali'i to us, what we've been able to maintain all of these centuries through Hālau Hula, do you contribute more than you consume? And just as Kepelino lamented in the slide that Kumu Kapua had, he said, in the ancient days, arrogance was an extremely terrible thing, but with the arrival of American enlightenment, the times of humility have passed and the era of arrogance reigns during this age. However, we so prize and grieve our former quality in that regard. And Kumu Hula chant, we have this Ho'opukai kala makahikina. And the last two lines of that chant are Ho'ino e ke kapu me nā li'i, e ola mākua mauloa. So even during the times of the last years of the monarchy, we lamented the times when the kapu of the ali'i, that system, was present, was gone. So we want to ho'ino ilena. We want to return to that era. We still chant that today. So even so that's a ka'i, right? And even our hula tableaus that we put together follow a hierarchy. If we do what we call hula kahiko, there's a hierarchy there. Ka'i. Then we do all the kahiko that have to do with akua. Then we honor the ali'i, and then we honor everything else. There's a hierarchy even there. So this is natural for us as Kumu Hula. So what we want to do is basically say, what's the awareness of your kūlana and your kuleana in your palama? There's a saying, it says, ikahale no pau kea'o ana, which is basically everything you should know is taught in your house. So if you see somebody scolding their child out in public, the Hawaiian point of view is they learned that from you. They learned that from you, and now you're making a big deal out of it. Perhaps you're misdirecting, trying to misdirect the attention, right? And so knowing that should come from a place of aloha, not judgment. Aloha means compassion, empathy, and regard. It automatically makes me put myself in your position. And that's what the kūlana and halau do. When I become an olapa, this is what I'm going to do. Or I remember what it was like when I was a paipai. I'm putting myself in their position. So what is your function in your palama? For whom and to whom are you accountable? And how does your kuleana affect the whole, beneficial or detrimental? So just like what I said, we have these students sometimes in our halau, and Ke'ano asked the question, Kumu Ke'ano asked the question at the beginning, what did we not do that, how did we fail that our haumana would treat us like this? In that one situation he spoke about. But sometimes we just have to chalk it up to saying, we did the best we could. They must have learned that from home. So malama I ka palama, yeah, to take care of that. At this time, I'm going to turn it back over to Keano and Lono to lead kind of this group discussion on how we can return to fundamental mana'o about hierarchies. Now, the difference in Western mana'o of hierarchy and how we perceive it from a Hawaiian point of view is exactly what Kumu Kapua said, staunch individualism. Because in staunch individualism, I'm not under you, I'm not over you. Actually, they kind of want to be over somebody. So in our system, it's a recognition of our kuleana, our rights and our privileges, and the means to ascend to different levels. So Keano and Lono, e ala ka imai ke olu olu.
Mahalo nui. So when we're taking a look at this hierarchy of hula, how can we then apply that into our own lives? And so we see that there are a bunch of core Hawaiian values that are practiced in this hierarchy of halau, as well as in other cultural practices, and they all exhibit both kūlana and kuleana, the values of respect, discipline, sacrifice, observation, commitment, and loyalty, all super important. And so
And they're not the only ones.
No,
they're
not at
not
all.
the only ones. Yeah.
But there are lots of benefits to that. They include balance, healthy psyche, support from everyone around, and as well as emotional stability, spirituality, as well as a sense of purpose and personal as well as collective growth.
And as many of us said here, Kumu Kapua, Kumu Pueo, ourselves, one of the important takeaways we hope to, we hope that you implore, and we hope that we were able to leave you with, for lack of a better term, is to contribute more than you consume. I think you've heard that numerous times today. It ensures collective sustainability and a thriving society. It also helps strengthen bonds of relationship within your palama, within your kaiaulu, within the Lāhui. So contributing more than you consume is really important for our Mauli Ola.
And so when we go back to that initial title of our presentation, to Nānā Ike Kumu, yes, you're going to look to that source, but you're not only going to consume from that source. You need to contribute back to the source. Yeah, and that is helping to replenish and maintain the spring that you drank from, right? Which is that source. And yes, you want to quench your thirst and acquire all that knowledge, but you also want to contribute back to that source. You want to malama that source to make sure that that water that you're drinking is clean and not stagnant. And so this idea of that the kumu needs just as much nourishment and inspiration from the haumana, just as much as the haumana get that nourishment and inspiration from the kumu. It is that reciprocal relationship.
Right? We say that all the time.
Yeah.
The haumana inspire us just as much as we inspire them. And so these structures, kūlana, kuleana, all help make these systems, make the world go round, basically. And hopefully you live in a collective world, and hopefully we understand that that we can't be staunch individualists. Yeah. With that being said, I'm gonna throw it back to Puel.
So I really like what you just said. People don't realize that we are humans. As Kumu Hula, we're humans. We're supposed to be the face. We're supposed to exhibit what we want exemplified. But in the end, it's difficult to do. It's difficult to be us. But we accept that. We also we also crave more relationship with our students. Now, if you think about one-on-one, it'd be easy for me to contribute to you. All the haumana only have one kumu, but the kumu has many haumana. And so please, if you're a Haumana Hula, check on your kumu. Check on your kumu. Don't consume more than you contribute. And in your palama, if you have plenty kids, all of those kids only have one parent or one set of parents, but they have all these kids. So if you're a child or if you're opio, check on your parent. It's not easy to do what they do. Put yourself in their situation, extend your aloha to them. And that's a way to further ensure harmony in a way that's reflective of the traditions that and the values that have been passed on from antiquity that allowed our people once to thrive here, not just survive here, but to thrive here. Mahalo to all my co-presenters. I'd like to invite back to our room Mehana Hind, Kumu Hula Mehana Hind, perhaps with some guidance or closing arguments. Just kidding. We'd like to thank everybody who joined us. There might be questions that we might not have seen through the Facebook app or through OHA's Zoom link. But yeah, thank you all for joining us. Mahalo Anui.
Mahalo e nā hoa kumu. And I see, I'm so sorry, my Emil. It's so excited. I think it's when he hears your voice, Will. But, you know, I think most of the people on here, I don't see any questions yet, but I think a lot of people are just kind of absorbing what it is that you just gifted them with. Yeah, that all of you guys just gifted them with. This was a very, I'm not gonna say heavy, it wasn't heavy, but it was a very full, you know, a full presentation with so much elements. There's so much individual elements that people are just gonna, you know, chew on for a little while before I think people are able to even articulate, you know, some of the questions that they've had. Some of this is new information, some of it is information that is already familiar, and then some of it is information that was familiar, but that was presented along with a perspective and context that it may not have been introduced to them originally. Yeah, so I have one question coming in. You know, this is from Kumu Hula. Yeah, and this question is, during this time of COVID, how can the relationships be continued personally? Any of you can answer.
So something that I would say, how can we continue these relationships? So we now have this Zoom capacity, and I'm gonna say I could not see my haumana every day, and I could not see this group of Kumu Hula Hua Makahikina every day if we had to wait for travel. And so this type of mana'o, this type of tool is so valuable. We found it valuable. FaceTime, phone calls, messages, private messages, perhaps. But something that that I was lucky to experience was my haumana got something together for me and then delivered it to me in a way that was COVID safe, that did not infringe upon my palama. And so it really is, it doesn't have to be a major shift. It can be small little things like that that really make a difference in a person's mana'o.
I'd like to add a little bit about that. Kind of jumping on what Puel said, finding the way, figuring it out. That's important. That's a kūlana of haumana. That's a kūlana of keiki for their makua. We Kumu Hula and the kumu, the source, cannot always spoon feed everyone. So, and how arrogant would we sound to have to tell every haumana, this is how you need to take care of me. Bring me ulu every 2 weeks or whatever la. How arrogant is that? Our whole point in this discussion is not to be so, but to touch upon our traditional and foundational understandings and cultural understandings. Figure it out. There are ways to safely drop off mea ai, and that's really what I wanted to say. In that meeting, I felt horribly guilty. knowing that this happened to one of our elder, well-respected Kumu Hula. Yeah, number one, she's a Kumu Hula, and number two, she is a kupuna. So more so, more important to Malamaher, right? I felt really guilty because literally the day before, our haumana dropped off a bag of mea'ai, a big bag of mea'ai, and we felt how blessed. But at the same time, and yes, I appreciated that from my students. But then to hear that um, a kumuhula, a kupuna, had to, and I'm going to say, endure the actions of her students, kind of took me back a little bit, made me feel guilty, made me really upset. And I think that we have the right to get upset, and we have the right to be concerned. Yeah. And these are ways, a simple phone call just to see, aloha kumu, how you doing? Can I get you anything? Do you need me to go to the store? And I appreciate, luckily, like I said, I feel blessed that a handful of my students will do that for me, yeah, or for us.
So for me, like Puel said, like Keanoma said, it's as simple as a text message or a call. Pehe oi, how you doing? How's the ohana? A really personal conversation. And also looking into what you may be cultivating outside in your yard. What can you contribute? You're feeding your family, but really your kumu is your family as well, right? What can you contribute? If it's flowers, that your kumu hula is going to put the flowers in a vase and remember you throughout the day until the flowers mai. But what kind of hana no eao, what can you make? Can you make lauhala bracelets? Even if it seems like the kumu hula has all those things, it's something your aloha is what really matters. Okay, aloha kamea nui, right? And that effort, just the effort of the text, the effort of showing your compassion and your care. To not, it doesn't have to be your kumu. It can be your mother. It can be your sister, your auntie down the road who lives by herself. Mahalo.
So as I been listening to everyone, and I've also been in that meeting with Kumu about, and when she said about nobody came to check on her, and I look back to the situation that we are in COVID, and my experience through COVID, and that I had to shut my halau down because of COVID while I was ma'i, and the outpouring of support that came in from my students for me and my husband, that was it was just a priceless moment, and so I think we sometimes you need help and you don't know how to ask. Yeah. And I think that's a huge thing for our people, that we just, now I get them. Now I go do 'em, I go do 'em. I'm that kind of kumu, yeah? And I'm sure like a lot of us are the same kind of kumu. Now I get them. I got this. I can take care of all of this on my own. I'm like the crazy Portuguese lady who gonna like holako everything and gonna get everything done before the students come, right? But when you put into a predicament, and especially if you're ma'i and you cannot come out of your house and you don't know how you're gonna get your me'ai, right? But then you get like all of these people that start showing up, and they start coming. That kind of community support from your haumana, from your hula siblings, and from the kaiaulu in general is a huge piece, to know just that little hook to say, hey, we know and we going kokua, right? You don't have to ask. And so when you hear like Kumu Hula who are notable, who we kind of look, not kind of, who we do look at as like right below Akua level, you know, even if they probably even went totally ascend up to the Akua level. Yeah. And so we look at that and we're like, okay, you know, we need to figure out how we can strengthen our haumana. How can we strengthen that relationship? And especially like how Auntie Hoku said, she don't like people call her auntie, but I'm gonna call her auntie, you know, because I remember. But that's okay, because I know I get some relation down the line. I'm gonna call her auntie. Okay, so Auntie Hoku said that how do we do that within this time, right? How do we strengthen our relationships within this time? And I think it's a two-way streak. I believe we all have to make the effort. Yeah, we all have to make the effort. And so to be accountable, yeah, the mutual accountability, right? Like how we talked about in the last, when I talked about mutual accountability, we all have to be mutually accountable, you know, for each other, to know that even if we not together because we're in a pandemic, you still get kuleana, right? Cannot sorry, not like point. You still get kuleana. Can make like this. You still get kuleana, right? And there's still, it's the kuleana not gonna go away just because we're in a pandemic. We still gotta malama our kumu, and us as kumu still gotta make sure that our haumana is being fed in accord, right? In accordance to how we, you know, how we need to do. And so and it all has to do with reciprocation, right? Reciprocation. But more so we as the haumana, you know, the haumana should always make sure that they're taking care of their kumu, you know, so that their kumu can feed them what they need to be fed. Because sometimes the kumu is tired. She is tired, okay? And you guys all know. And Zoom make us more tired, yeah? So some reciprocation, yeah? So like that, I like that Olelo Pokole that you did, Puel, yeah? About are you contributing more than you are consuming, yeah, in your space? And for the most part, all of our haumana are contributors, yeah, because they're there for a function. But then you have those ones that are consumers, yeah. And generally in the in the human context, we're all consumers, yeah. But in the hula process, we have to learn how to be huge contributors, yeah. Because that's the only way the system will work. That is the only way the system will work in our traditional space. Yeah, and so that goes down to like feeding the kumu, making sure the kumu is healthy so that the kumu can feed you, and the kumu has enough energy that they can spiritually feed you so you can spiritually move together as a collective, yeah? Okay, that's all I have to say. Mahalo.
Maikai for that. You know, I've had an experience too, not just with my own Kumu Hula, but how we can actually do this, or what it looks like when we take the same concept and apply it to other kumu, other loea, other kahuna around us. Right? I had a thing after getting my uhi from Kione Nunes. It took me a while. It took me many years of speaking with him, running into him, you know, having conversations, talking genealogy to get my first one. And ever since that time, there would be times when I would travel to specific spaces that I knew that he had some pilina to, and I'd always ask him before I go, Ikione, Agwen Aotearoa, you need anything, you know, you want anything, you know, let me know, you know, and and this relationship was so hilarious because he would send me down there to bring back the oddest objects of them all. One time his answer to me was, oh yeah, I want some wheat Bix. Now, if any of you, it's like wheat, shredded wheat, but it's the Aotearoa version of shredded wheat. Mind you, we get shredded wheat in Hawaii, but Oyeki Kumu, right? He's the Kumu. He's created parts of my body, right, that are precede me at times, right? So he's warranting of that. I'm like, okay, I will bring you back wheat Bix. Another time he sent me down there to bring back something for his tires, like this tire black, which I guess over here it's like Armor All, for making your tires shiny, right? And I was like, can we have those things here? But nope, not that brand and not that way, right? But that's another way ongoing throughout the years, right? It keeps, even though he's not a direct kumu of mine, and we don't have that more daily relationship like how me and my Kumu Hula did. It is a relationship like that he has a kūlana, he has impacted my life that way. And when I know that it's something that he would appreciate and enjoy, then I reach out to him. Hey, Kenny, what would you like? Stuff like that. So, we can, like you guys have all said, on here, can reach out to the aunties, the uncles, the other kupuna who are around to do this too. Our brother and fellow Kumu Hula, Pele Ka'io, dropped in the Zoom chat, and this is for the people who are joining us on Facebook, a really good, just a whole mana'o, right? And he says, this presentation is a great reminder of kūlana and kuleana in a time, when Ike Hula and Uniki are becoming more widely accessible. Yeah. I know when I started hula, decades ago, and Uniki was a rare occurrence, right? It didn't happen very much. There were only certain lineages who were doing it. Now it's happening more and more. And so that's an amazing thing. That's a great thing. But we're also seeing Ike Hula being shared in platforms and in spaces where the accessibility allows it to be vulnerable to certain situations that can, and this is a whole nother webinar that we could take a whole nother 2 hours on, right? But that can take hula into places, in spaces that are, how should I say this nicely, that are quite odd for the practice, right? Quite, and at different situations could be quite devastating to the practice too, right? So mahalo Pele for that mana'o. Yeah, there's just so much. Oh God, my goodness, so much stuff. I think I'm going to encourage everybody who's watching now, after you have ingested all this Ike that you have gotten today, right? And all this very just wonderful perspective, right? And a lens through which, or something that can help your lens through which you see hula, through which you see relationships and pilina between yourself and those that you should, those that feed your source, right? That are the source of you, right? That you jump back on Oha's Facebook page and pose a question, if you have one later on, and we'll be checking it out every so often, and then I'll share it with the other kumu on here. But if you have, or a revelation, right, an epiphany of sorts, right? If you have that too, come back, drop it in the comments, right? Would love to build this, and utilize this space as a vaihona for that process, yeah. So, and I'm sorry, I'm looking in two different places on two different screens. So that's a comment. It looks like, why is she looking off into yonder, like one 1980s Kramer commercial or something? See, if you guys don't know where Kramer's is, you guys are just way too young. It's way too young. But that was an all men's store. I don't know why I would pick that store, right? But anyways, but Kumu, do you guys want to share some last thoughts here for us?
Thank you for hosting us, and thank you for this venue. This is something that we can do, hopefully, to bring a little bit back of our culture and our values, our traditions, and inspire them, hopefully, to be reabsorbed back into the community. Ho'eu, ho'ulu, ho'ola.
Yeah, I would like to just give a little mahalo to, first off, on the theme of Nānā i ke kumu. I just like to acknowledge and mahalo my kumu, Dr. Taupuri Tangaro, for caring for the ipu of wisdom of his kumu and passing down the torch to continue our hula lineage. Also, mahalo nui a'oi e mehana for your respected leadership during this time that resonates throughout our pai'aina. Mahalo nui e Kumu Hokulani Holt and now Kumu Hula, who kicked off this season of Lono with their presentation of Wonders of Uala. And like Poa mentioned earlier, if you missed it, you can still watch it on OHA's FB page. Mahalo nui to the Kumu Hula panelists, Kumu Keano, Kumu Lono, Kumu Kapua, and Kumu Puel. It was and is truly an honor and privilege to share virtual space and Ike with you all. And last but not least, mahalo to the Anaina. To every one of you out there who tuned in today, me ke aloha nui ya oko pakahiapo. Lono i ka makahiki.
Aloha.
Okay.
Mahalo.
If that's it from everybody, join us again on November 5th, which is this upcoming Thursday. I believe, yes, this upcoming Thursday, where we'll hear a presentation about Kaunaoa, right? And I just checked this morning and my Kaunaoa is growing outside on my lawn. That just means that I never cut the lawn. That's a long time, but I have Kaunaoa outside of my yard right now. I just checked this morning, so excited. But you will, just like the Uala presentation yesterday, right? The Kaunaoa, we'll learn a lot more mo'olelo, some mele, and also and the most fascinating to me is you'll see that Kaunaoa is not only something that can be found for us here in Oahu on the west side of the island, right? You will be shocked at where they find Kaunaoa, yeah, but its medicinal properties and how it's helping our Lāhui during this time is a great thing to understand. Then on November 8th, join us back again on that Sunday where we have Kumu Hula Lemomi Akana, who will be sharing mana'o a ike about hula lineages, but also she will be teaching a hula noho and mele oli and a new mele that she created just for this time that we're all going through. And then just keep checking back with us as we go along. We will have more presentations throughout the month of November. Yeah, so mahalo Puel for an awesome moderating of this panel. I feel like I let my Uala team down yesterday. I was just like, oh my goodness. Awesome moderating, and these Kumu Hula on here. The beauty of this panel right here is they represent diversity of lineages. They are definitely the next generation of Kumu Hula to come up and make their Kumu so proud of the work that they're doing. So I mahalo each and every one of them to step in, because they're all introverts. Go figure. I think I'm the only extroverted Kumu Hula. I don't know. But these guys are all introverts, but they stepped into this mode to share a part of themselves with all of you. Right? So mahalo nui to all of you. Come back anytime and watch this again on the Office of Hawaiian Affairs Facebook page from Hui Makahikina on our mission for Lāhui, Kānaka, and Mauli Ola. We mahalo each and every one of you. Have a safe evening, a great weekend, and ahui ho kako. Aloha.
Aloha, kako.